The room fell silent as Marcus stepped forward, his worn work boots leaving dusty prints on the polished marble floor. Unlike the other candidates in their pressed suits and designer watches, he'd come straight from his second job, still wearing his faded uniform. What the other applicants didn't know, what none of them could have guessed, was that the woman watching from behind mirrored glass wasn't just the CEO. She was also the little girl Marcus had stopped to help outside, when everyone else had walked past. If you're moved by stories of second chances and unexpected kindness, hit that like button and subscribe to see more content that reminds us what truly matters in life. The morning had started like any other for Eliza Chen. As CEO of Horizon Innovations, she'd built her tech empire from nothing, transforming it into a Fortune 500 company through sheer determination and brilliant strategy. At 42, she had everything money could buy, except someone to share it with. The string of failed relationships had left her wary, cynical even. Men either wanted her money or were intimidated by her success. Today was different, though. Today she would implement the unconventional hiring process she'd been planning for months. Horizon needed a new chief operations officer, and Eliza was tired of the same cookie-cutter executives who looked good on paper but lacked the human qualities she valued most. Ms. Chen, the candidates are arriving, her assistant informed her through the intercom. Thank you, Rachel. I'll be down shortly. Eliza smoothed her tailored blazer and took a deep breath. The board had reluctantly approved her unusual selection method, though they thought she was simply being eccentric. They didn't understand what she was really testing for. Downstairs, 20 men waited in the grand lobby, each believing they were there for a traditional interview process. Their resumes were impeccable: Harvard, Yale, Stanford MBAs, years of executive experience, impressive references. On paper, any of them could do the job. But Eliza wasn't looking for what was on paper. Marcus Reid hadn't planned on applying for an executive position at Horizon Innovations. At 38, he was just trying to keep his head above water. After his wife Lisa died from cancer 3 years ago, he'd been left to raise their daughter Emma alone. His background in operations management had landed him a decent middle management position at a manufacturing company, but the medical bills had drained their savings. He'd taken a second job working evenings at a warehouse just to make ends meet. It was Emma's teacher who had forwarded him the job listing. "You're overqualified for where you are now," she'd told him during a parent-teacher conference. "Emma mentioned you used to run operations for a bigger company. You should apply." He'd almost deleted the email. The idea of working at Horizon seemed laughable. They wouldn't want someone like him. But Emma had found the email and begged him to try. "Mom would want you to," she'd said, and that was all it took. Now he stood in the opulent lobby, acutely aware of his worn suit and the dark circles under his eyes from his late shift the night before. The other candidates exuded confidence, exchanging business cards and comparing credentials. Marcus clutched his worn leather portfolio and wondered what he was doing there. Outside the Horizon building, Eliza had implemented the first test. Dressed in ordinary clothes with her hair hidden under a cap, she sat on the sidewalk near the entrance with a young girl, an actress hired for the day. As each candidate approached, the girl would accidentally spill her backpack, scattering papers and school supplies across the sidewalk. 19 men walked past. Some stepped around the mess, others glanced down with mild annoyance, but all continued into the building without stopping. Only Marcus paused, kneeling down despite his pressed-for-time schedule. "Here, let me help you with that," he said, gathering math worksheets and colored pencils. "Thank you, mister," the girl replied, following her script. "No problem. My daughter's about your age. What grade are you in?" "Fourth," she answered. Marcus smiled. "Emma too. She's always dropping things as well." He handed over the last pencil. "There you go. Have a good day at school." "Thanks. Good luck with your interview." Marcus looked surprised. "How did you know?" The girl just smiled and skipped away as Eliza watched, making a note on her phone before slipping around to the service entrance. Inside, the candidates were led to a waiting area where coffee and pastries were available. Eliza observed through one-way glass as her assistant announced there would be a 30-minute delay. The hidden cameras captured everything: who took more than their share of refreshments, who complained about the wait, who spent the time networking versus who buried themselves in their phones. Marcus sat quietly, reviewing his notes. When an older custodian entered to empty the trash, only Marcus acknowledged him with a smile and a "good morning." When another candidate spilled coffee and left the mess, it was Marcus who asked for napkins and cleaned it up. The next test came when Rachel announced that due to a scheduling error, the candidates would need to complete a group exercise while waiting. They were divided into teams of 4 and given a complex business problem to solve in 20 minutes. In his group, Marcus listened more than he spoke. When another member tried to dominate the conversation, Marcus skillfully drew out the quieter participants. "Jim, you mentioned something about supply chain efficiency earlier. What do you think about this aspect?" His group ultimately presented the most comprehensive solution, with Marcus giving credit to his teammates rather than highlighting his own contributions. By lunchtime, Eliza had seen enough to eliminate half the candidates. Those remaining were taken to the company cafeteria, not the executive dining room they might have expected. Here, another test awaited. The cafeteria had been carefully staged. Several tables had been reserved with "executive interview" signs. At one table sat a woman in a custodial uniform eating alone. At another, a young intern struggled with crutches while trying to carry her tray. Most candidates gravitated toward the reserved tables, clustering together to continue their networking. Marcus noticed the intern and immediately went to help her, carrying her tray and asking where she'd like to sit. After ensuring she was comfortable, he got his own lunch and, instead of joining the other candidates, sat down across from the custodian. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. The woman, actually Horizon's head of human resources in disguise, looked up in surprise. "You don't want to sit with the other fancy suits?" Marcus laughed. "I'm not really a fancy suit kind of guy. I'm Marcus." "Gloria," she replied, shaking his hand. "What brings you to Horizon?" As they ate, Marcus spoke honestly about his situation, his late wife, raising Emma alone, his hopes for providing her a better life. He asked about Gloria's work, listening intently as she described fictional challenges with her supervisor and concerns about upcoming changes to the cleaning staff schedules. "Have you brought this up with management?" he asked. "People like me don't get much face time with people like them," she replied, gesturing toward the executive offices. "That's a shame," Marcus said. "The people doing the actual work often have the best insights into how to improve things." After lunch, the remaining candidates were given individual assignments, complex business scenarios to analyze and present solutions for. They were provided with offices, computers, and access to company data. What they didn't know was that each office had been set up with specific challenges. In Marcus's office, the computer was programmed to crash halfway through his preparation time. When he called IT for help, the technician who arrived was rude and unhelpful, another actor following Eliza's script. Despite the setback and frustration, Marcus remained patient and respectful, eventually solving the problem himself with minimal time remaining to complete his presentation. In the hallway afterward, he encountered a young employee, another actor, crying in the stairwell. Despite his time pressure, Marcus stopped. "Hey, are you okay?" The young man looked up. "I'm fine. My boss rejected my project proposal after I worked on it for months." "That's rough," Marcus said, sitting down beside him. "My daughter says I give dad advice whether people want it or not, so feel free to ignore me, but sometimes the best ideas need a few rejections before they find their way." He spent 5 precious minutes offering encouragement before hurrying to prepare his presentation. As a result, his slides weren't as polished as the other candidates, but his analysis was insightful and practical. By the end of the day, Eliza had narrowed the field to 5 candidates. For the final test, she invited them to a cocktail reception where board members and senior executives would be present. The real evaluation, however, would happen before they even reached the reception. As each candidate arrived at the designated floor, they encountered a small crisis in the hallway. A young boy, another child actor, had apparently wandered away from the company daycare and was lost and frightened. Four candidates reacted with annoyance or awkward attempts to find someone else to handle the situation. They were polite but clearly saw the child as an obstacle between them and their networking opportunity. When Marcus exited the elevator and saw the tearful boy, he immediately knelt down to eye level. "Hey buddy, are you lost?" The boy nodded. "My name's Marcus. What's yours?" "Tyler." "Nice to meet you, Tyler. I have a daughter named Emma. She's a bit older than you, but she still gets scared sometimes too. How about we find where you're supposed to be?" Marcus took the boy's hand and walked him to the reception desk, missing the first 15 minutes of the networking event to ensure Tyler was safely returned to the daycare, actually a conference room where Eliza's assistant was waiting. When Marcus finally entered the reception, he didn't know that Eliza had been watching the entire time. She approached him directly, introducing herself as the CEO for the first time. "Mr. Reid. I'm Eliza Chen. Thank you for joining us today." Marcus tried to hide his surprise. "Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Chen. I apologize for being late. There was a little boy who needed help finding his way." Eliza smiled. "Yes, I know. That's actually why I wanted to speak with you personally." She guided him to a quiet corner. "You've been part of a rather unconventional interview process today." Marcus looked confused. "I'm not sure I understand." "Every interaction you've had since arriving this morning was staged, the girl outside with the spilled backpack, the rude IT technician, the crying employee, the lost child. They were all tests, and you were the only candidate who passed every single one." Marcus was speechless. "I don't just need a COO with business acumen, Mr. Reid. I need someone with integrity, compassion, and authentic leadership qualities. Someone who treats the custodian with the same respect as the board member. Someone who values people over protocols." I was just being myself," Marcus stammered. "Exactly," Eliza replied. "While other candidates were trying to impress me, you were busy being the kind of person I want helping me run this company." She handed him a folder. "This is our offer. The salary is non-negotiable because I'm already offering you 30% above market rate. The benefits include comprehensive health coverage, a college fund for your daughter, and flexible hours so you can be there for her school events." Marcus opened the folder, his hands trembling as he saw the figure. It was more money than he'd ever imagined making, enough to quit his second job, pay off the medical debt, and move Emma to a better school district. "Why me?" he asked, still disbelieving. "There must be more qualified candidates. Technical skills can be taught, Mr. Reid. Character cannot. I built this company from nothing, and I know that its future depends not just on smart business decisions but on maintaining its humanity. You've shown me today that you understand that instinctively." 6 months later, Horizon Innovations was featured in Business Week for its revolutionary management approach and employee-centered culture. The article highlighted the unusual hiring process that had brought Marcus Reid into the C-suite and the subsequent changes he'd implemented, from restructuring the custodial staff schedules based on Gloria's feedback to creating a mentorship program inspired by the young employee he'd consoled in the stairwell. The photograph accompanying the article showed Eliza and Marcus standing side by side in the company's newly established on-site daycare center, a project Marcus had championed to help working parents. In the background, Emma Reid could be seen reading to a group of children, including Tyler, the lost boy, who had now been hired as a regular actor for the company's ongoing unconventional interview process. The final paragraph quoted Eliza, "In business, we often mistake credentials for character and experience for wisdom. Marcus reminded me that the qualities that truly drive success can't be listed on a resume. Sometimes the person who looks least like your idea of a leader is exactly the leader you need. As for Marcus and Emma, they had moved into a comfortable home near Emma's new school. The medical bills were paid, and a photograph of Lisa sat prominently on Marcus's desk at work, next to a handmade card from Emma that read, "Mom would be so proud." And she would have been, not because of the title or the salary, but because even when no one was watching, when he thought every door was closed and the weight of the world was on his shoulders, Marcus had remained the man she had fallen in love with, someone who would always stop to help a child pick up spilled pencils, no matter how late he was running. In the evenings, after Emma was asleep, Marcus and Eliza often worked late together, their professional relationship gradually evolving into friendship. They were different in many ways, she with her privileged background and business empire, he with his working-class roots and practical wisdom, but they shared a vision for what a company could be when humanity was valued as highly as profit. "You know," Eliza said one night as they reviewed quarterly projections, "I never told you the real reason I created that hiring process." Marcus looked up from his laptop. "I assumed you were tired of hiring sharks in suits." She smiled. "That too. But it was more personal." She hesitated, then continued. "When I was 9, my father died suddenly. My mother had to take over his small business while raising me alone. I watched her being undermined and disrespected by men who couldn't see past her gender or her grief. The only person who treated her with dignity was our operations manager, a man who, on paper, wasn't as qualified as others, but who understood that business is ultimately about people." "What happened to him?" Marcus asked. "He became her right hand. Together they built the company into something significant enough that I could sell it to fund Horizon's launch." Eliza closed her laptop. "When I saw you help that little girl outside while everyone else walked by, I saw him. I saw the kind of person who understands that our choices when no one is watching define who we really are." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Lisa used to say something similar. She called them soul moments, those times when you act purely from your core, without calculation. She sounds like she was very wise. She was. Marcus smiled at the memory. She also would have found it hilarious that my inability to walk past someone who needs help without stopping is what landed me in a corner office. As they gathered their things to leave, Eliza paused. "The board is impressed with the quarterly numbers, by the way. Your restructuring of the supply chain saved us millions without a single layoff." "That wasn't me, that was the team. I just listened to the people who've been doing the work for years." "And that," Eliza said, "is exactly why you were the right choice." Outside, the city lights glimmered as they walked to the parking garage. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, difficult decisions, the constant balance of business necessities against human needs. But for tonight, both took comfort in knowing they weren't facing those challenges alone. And somewhere, perhaps, Lisa was watching, proud that the man she loved had remained true to himself, even when tested in ways he never could have anticipated. Because in the end, it wasn't about passing a CEO's elaborate test. It was about living with the kind of integrity that made such tests unnecessary. The true measure of Marcus Reid had never been his resume or his business acumen. It had been in the small moments of kindness that most people thought didn't matter, moments that had ultimately changed not just his life and his daughters, but the culture of an entire company and the lives of everyone it touched. If this story touched your heart, remember that the small acts of kindness you show when no one is watching might be the very things that open doors you never imagined possible. Like, subscribe, and share to spread this message of authentic leadership and the power of remaining true to your values, no matter the circumstances.